Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you all are all doing great. I've got a few new podcast supporters I want to thank. Ann and Steve Bush, Michael Elza, Mike Foote, Carrie Andreessen, John Houston, and Devin Matson. All 7 of these folks signed up to support the podcast through Patreon, and there's some benefits that come with being a Patreon supporter. That's monthly support. I do a behind-the-scenes newsletter. I do videos about different and new books that I've been reading. You get a discount at the Mountain Prairie store and a lot of other stuff. You can go to mountainprairie.com/support to learn all about it. Thank you very much. Hey, this is Ed Roberson, and this is the Mountain Prairie podcast, where I introduce you to some of the innovative individuals who are shaping the future of the American West. I meet most of these people through my work in land conservation or through my hobbies and interests that revolve around spending time up high in the mountains. My guests include ranchers, writers, entrepreneurs, conservationists, athletes, artists, adventurers, pretty much anyone who's doing important work, has an interesting story, and loves the American West. My guest today is Adam Gall. Longtime Mountain Prairie listeners will definitely remember Adam. He's a Colorado-based hunting guide who, along with his wife Anna, owns Timber to Table Guide Service. Adam's a highly regarded expert in the pursuit of elk and mule deer, and he offers a variety of services ranging from public land hunts for experienced hunters to private land hunts for beginners. In my first episode with Adam, we talked about his career path to guiding, which included stints as a wolf biologist and science teacher, as well as his advocacy for public lands and wildlife conservation. In early January, I had the pleasure of joining Adam for my first ever elk hunt, and this episode is a discussion of that extremely powerful experience. I'd wanted to hunt elk ever since moving to the Rocky Mountains back in 2005, but I never took the necessary steps to learn how to do it. While I do have limited experience with bird hunting, I had zero experience hunting with a rifle. The idea of starting big game hunting from scratch was intimidating and overwhelming. Plus, I have way too many other hobbies that fill my time. So elk hunting has been on the back burner for more than 16 years. But after getting to know Adam, learning about his skills as a teacher, and admiring his calm demeanor and reverence for wildlife, I decided that he was just the person to introduce me to elk hunting. To be completely transparent, I was very, very nervous about all aspects of the hunt. My shooting proficiency, the killing, quartering the animal, and processing the meat. I have the utmost respect for the skills required to be a responsible and effective big game hunter, so I was intent on approaching the entire endeavor with a high level of seriousness and focus. But from the moment I arrived in Hotchkiss all the way until we had processed the last pound of meat, Adam and Anna were exceptional teachers. We had a successful hunt, and I left Hotchkiss with a newfound, life-changing appreciation for everything that's required to procure meat for my family. The purpose of this episode is to provide some instruction and insight to people just like me, individuals who are interested in big game hunting and procuring meat, but have no idea where or how to start. Even if you've never shot a gun, there's useful information in this episode. Adam and I discuss all aspects of the hunt, from shooting practice at the gun range on the first day, all the way to processing the meat into burgers, steaks, and roast on the last day. I talk about the overwhelming emotions I felt after killing such a majestic animal, and the eye-opening experience of learning about the specific cuts of meat with Anna. We talk about how Adam's experience as a teacher makes him such an effective guide, and the importance of approaching hunting with respect, reverence, and curiosity. We talk about game management, food systems, private land's role in wildlife health, and much more. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hopefully it'll give you the encouragement to pursue hunting if that's of interest to you. Hunting is obviously not for everyone, but as a person who eats and enjoys meat, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to participate in all the tasks that are required to put clean, healthy meat on my family's table. Thanks again to Adam and Anna for the once-in-a-lifetime experience, and thanks to all of you for listening. Hope you enjoy. First of all, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'd say is a peak experience, peak life experience. I don't know where it ranks among all the stuff you think about when you think about peak life experiences, but no question top 10, probably like top 6 of
Would that mean, does that mean I'm number 6? Just to...
No. I think me getting married is number 6. You're like number 2. No, I'm just joking. but no, just an unbelievable experience. And as we talked about, before I came up here and we were planning this, I was super excited about it and super nervous about it, but it surpassed all expectations in every way. The powerfulness of it, the fun of it, the great, part of hanging out with you and your family is just really, really unbelievable. And I'm still processing it. And I think maybe this conversation can help me process it more. But, when I think about who will be listening to this, I think about people like me who have wanted to elk hunt or hunt in some way over their whole life for big game and haven't really had the opportunity. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to go about it. And so you're the man when it comes to teaching people like me with, very, very limited experience. I mean, I hunted a lot of ducks and birds, but nothing with a rifle. So maybe we can start out by talking about your business of teaching people like me how to hunt. Like, how did that come to be? How did you start doing that?
I think it maybe stemmed from just having a few experiences, both with friends as well as people I didn't know that I was just guiding that were new hunters. And I think it was just seeing their response to seeing something like a fresh pile of elk poop, or hearing their first bugle, or seeing their first elk, and they got they got so excited. And that to me was like, whoa, they're registering some stuff here, versus the hunter who's killed 12 elk and they know what an elk looks like. And not to say that they're not excited or they don't appreciate the hunt, but just from a guide standpoint, me personally, I really thought that was kind of a cool thing, seeing the reaction that those newer hunters had and how excited they got, and sometimes the sponge-like attitude they had where they just wanted to learn as much as possible. Not that I know it all by any stretch, but being able to show some things out in the field. And then, of course, with Anna's work on these particular hunts, that's a big part of it too. But yeah, the field aspect on my end, being able to translate as much knowledge over to them as possible. I got a kick out of it. It was cool to experience and get them started on a kind of positive first experience, I guess. I don't know if I'm answering the question.
No, that's perfect.
Well.
And I think for people who haven't listened to our first episode, they need to go back and do that. But talk about before you were a guide, your experience as a teacher. Because I figured that was a big part of why you're, so well regarded as a guide and just, in this world of teaching people how to do this. But it was clear that you have experience, or at least a very, very good talent of teaching. So how was your experience as a teacher? Like, how does that carry over into this? Yeah,
that's a big part of why we started Timber to Table, was because it sort of it allowed me to scratch the teaching itch, I guess, that I still had. I was a high school science teacher here in Hotchkiss for a few years, but I was not cut out to be a career classroom teacher in the traditional sense of classroom. So yeah, being able to teach people through the guiding lens or through the guiding world allowed me to keep that going and be able to be an educator of sorts. What I found in teaching, number one, you got to make it enjoyable. It's got to be fun.
Yeah.
That's one thing I learned my first year with high school kids is it could be a grumpy, tired classroom of 15-year-olds, but if you can make them laugh in the first 5 or 10 minutes, you're going to be able to just about teach them anything you want, even if it's taking notes in their notebook for 40 minutes or something drab like that. But so making it fun, and that same carries over to hunting. Hunting should be fun. It shouldn't be this horrible, painful, labor intense. Sometimes it is all those things, just by the nature of what you're doing. But if you can make it fun, I think that's a big part of it. And people are going to be a lot more open to learning and listening when they're having fun. with the person they're with. So I try to approach it through that way. And then with that comes the, respect for the animal and safety in the field and all those other components that should be a part of the hunt, that I want to make sure I'm getting across to hunters, that I'm quote unquote teaching them.
Yeah.
All that stuff kind of falls in there as well. So,
well, you're so humble, you won't brag about yourself, but I will, that it was this perfect mix of fun, but seriousness, like very serious about safety, very serious about shot selection, very serious about respect for the animal. And I think you and I I'm on the same page with you, just generally about all that stuff. Like, and I think when I showed up, I was nervous about how is this going to go? Like, I mean, I've shot
this jackass that I'm hunting.
Yeah, who's this guy? I'm out in the woods with
but I hear a lot of banjos.
Yeah. But it was a calm and fun kind of. The vibe was calm and fun, but also serious. And like this is not something that we're going to be messing around with.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point in that it's not all Adam in the field making magic happen. A lot of it is you or the hunter or whoever that I'm guiding. If they're coming into it with the right mindset and
what is the ideal mindset in your mind? And if I didn't meet the ideal mindset, that's fine. But like
we fell pretty far short.
Sorry, I knew it.
No, I think you touched on them right there. As far as you were nervous a little bit, which to me that means you're respectful of the situation, and you're looking forward to it. You want it to go well, or you don't quite know what to expect. You're not just thinking about work next week, and this is something I'm doing to fill in the weekend time slot or something. So, yeah, taking it seriously, but not too seriously, making sure you're having fun. And yeah, you did great, I guess, for answering that part of it. Yeah, I guess it's kind of complicated because you can't paint people into a corner as far as like, well, this is how they should be when they show. Yeah. I mean, they got to be who they are.
Sure.
You know? But ideally, if they're able to relax and have fun, but know that when the rubber meets the road, you need to listen. Mm-hmm. Don't guide the guide. That's a really common, maybe you've heard that in the past. It's like you're here for a reason. You quote unquote hired me for a reason. Let me do my job, and please ask questions or let me know if I'm not doing something right. But at the same time, do what I say.
Sure.
When there's a lot going on that the hunter may not be aware of, if they're new to it, and they might just be focused strictly on the elk that we're watching, but I got about 17 other things that I'm trying to think about to make sure, things go as smoothly as possible. So, and that it is a good experience, for the hunter. So yeah, just being open and respectful and willing to have fun, but have the ability to listen well, follow directions.
Yeah.
It sounds like talking to like a kindergartner or something, and that's not what I'm trying to imply, but it is really just hopefully basic human behaviors, that people are able to demonstrate in the field when they're hunting.
I would guess that on the hunts you do with people like me, the vast majority of them have that attitude because they know what they don't know, or at least they know they don't know a lot. And versus some trophy, you're going after a trophy bull with somebody that's been hunting forever, and they just are focused on getting that trophy, and they need help to do it.
Yes. Then
there may be some of that know-it-all. But I couldn't imagine somebody in my position coming in and then all of a sudden telling you what to do.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been lucky. We've had a lot of really wonderful people that have participated on these hunts with us. Like by and large, they're all like you, like they're here to learn. They're super excited about it. And again, with these timber to table hunts, we really try to stress that it's for newer hunters. Like this is an educational thing. So if you've been hunting elk or deer for 10, 15, whatever, this probably isn't the hunt that's geared towards you, because that hunter is going to know what they need to do. And on the quote-unquote trophy hunting sense, or even just a general public land guided hunt, that's the bulk of our business, we still get a lot of new hunters there. But with our more experienced hunters, it's still a cool thing. From a guide standpoint, it's just a much different, to me, it's a slightly different hat that you got to wear.
Sure.
Because the hunter knows what he needs to do or she needs to do.
Yeah.
I'm just there to get him in the right spot. I'm going to have a better understanding of the topography and the terrain and where the elk might be, and getting them to those spots. If they kill something, they'll need help. So it's you're just kind of doing some different tasks when you're on those hunts with more experienced folks. You can still have a blast with those people.
Sure.
I'm not trying to paint them in a bad light.
No, it's just a different deal.
It's just a different hunter. They've got more experience, so they're not going to ask the same questions or whatever. So
let's talk about the specific hunt we did, because I think people who maybe have this peripheral interest in hunting, maybe they follow some people on social media who hunt, and they see these pictures of people in full camo, this fancy, all this gear, and they're walking at timberline, these beautiful, out in the middle of nowhere. Just, it looks like this kind of adventure. It would be an adventure even if you weren't hunting. And then these people are out there either with bows or rifles, in the middle, just completely isolated. And that sounds cool, but it's intimidating enough, at least for somebody like me, the idea of killing a 300-plus pound animal anywhere, much less when you combine it with some big adventure. And I mean, I've been on a lot of big adventures, but what I liked about this experience was, we are in this beautiful landscape of western Colorado. It's awesome, but it was not like a multi-day camping trip. It was more. Yeah,
you're watching the school bus go by.
Yeah, exactly. So talk about. Can you just kind of explain the way you see it? These meat hunts that you do, like what is the setup? What is the land? How does that work?
Yeah, well, on your hunt specifically, we have permission to hunt a ranch down on the river bottom. In this particular, it's not a huge ranch. It's a cool place. It's an old, multi-generational North Fork Valley family that's been ranching cattle. And it's a few hundred acres, it's not some 10,000 acre private ranch up in the high country or whatever. It's right in between the two towns here in the valley. And, there's old farm equipment, and Calvin is checking his calves and feeding, it's an active thing. There's the dogs and all that kind of stuff. So it's
the highway.
The road and other off-highway roads and houses. And so
which adds to the importance of your job.
Right. And that's kind of what I was referring to, like the 17 other things I got to be thinking about. It's, yes, I want the hunter focused on the elk and breathing and looking through the scope and all that stuff. But I got to make sure the shot we're taking isn't going to go somewhere if there's a stray bullet, ricochet. There's other houses nearby that can hear the shot or possibly even see us hunting that, hey, they may not be big fans of hunting. So the image that we project as hunters actively hunting elk in plain sight of the general public, that adds a component to things that you got to pay attention to. So there's all those things, as well as, holy cow, what are the elk doing? Okay, they're ducking into the cottonwoods to go bed down in the river bottom. Like, we got to make a move or we got to back out of here. So there's that part of it as well. But yeah, the place we hunted specifically, it was rural. I mean, it's rural.
Oh yeah.
But it's not like you're way out in the sticks somewhere. It's like you can walk to the truck in 5 minutes type of thing. You're not on some, like you referred to, like, oh, you're packing in 8 miles into the backcountry. It's like the elk winter on this ranch, and they're actually starting to live there almost year round now, which is that's a whole different thing. But the elk are there, and they frequent this ranch a lot. As wonderful as the family is that owns the property, they don't want the elk there. They just, you saw how much grass was in that cow's stomach.
Yeah.
And there's anywhere from 50 to 200 of them maybe every night that are just hammering their fields. And so that puts a big dent in their ability to run their cattle operation on the pastures that they have. So there's these damage hunts that the state gives the family. Here's these damage vouchers. You can use these to move the elk off your property from October 1st to January 31st, or whatever the dates they set up might be. And that, in partnering with them, we're able to conduct these hunts. So it's a little bit of a win-win. It helps the family that's ranching pressure those elk a little bit and maybe push them into some other areas. And it gives our hunters an opportunity to have a cool, fairly high odds of a shot opportunity type of hunt. So
yeah, one thing about that, all my years selling ranches, I had this idea of that I understood, when talking to landowners, that elk can come in and they can tear up, a field.
It's unbelievable.
But I didn't fully understand it until, a few days ago when we saw, you see all those elk, and then we killed that one, and you see their stomach and how much fresh grass is in their stomach.
Yeah.
And that's maybe like 12 hours worth of grass, maybe.
Yeah, or 8.
Yeah. And so it's, I think it's tough for people who don't understand it or are completely against killing animals. I mean, these things have to be managed. The reality is, like, there is private land, there are fences, there is agriculture, and so these animals have to be managed. Mm-hmm. They have to.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there. I guess I'd like to point out is, we always talk about public land hunting and being a public land owner, and that kind of hot topic right now, I guess, and that, that a lot of people are participating in, which is awesome, but often overlooked is the extreme importance of good private land habitat and landowners that are tolerant of elk or deer or whatever wildlife we're talking about, birds, being on their property and having the ability to carry out their existence. If it weren't for their ranch, those elk they'd probably be struggling a little bit, or they'd be having to subsist on more marginal habitat. Yes, we're hunting them and we're putting pressure on them, but they come right back in, a day or two later, and they're doing the same thing. But that family is, by and large, okay with it, so long as they're getting some pressure and bumped around a little bit. But they like elk, It's not like they hate the animals. They just don't want them on there in mass numbers day and night, setting up shop, and eating all of the food that they need for their livestock operation. So I'm not trying to paint them in a bad light at all, because they're a wonderful
Well, they
family.
couldn't. It would ruin their place, and then the elk would move on to somewhere else. I mean, it's like it just needs to be managed.
Yes, needs to be managed in a way that's helpful to both the private landowner as well as the wildlife resource. And so, again, that's where it's like having private landowners that are tolerant. Man, to me, it's just as important as well-managed public land. Because the winter range is oftentimes on private land, and that winter range is what will dictate how well that herd does or how well that wildlife population does. Because if they don't have good winter range habitat, they're going to starve, they're going to die, or whatever.
Yeah.
So private land should be given just as much value as the public land resource, in my humble opinion. It's a balance for sure.
So I'm just thinking about how I would think about this, the questions I would have if I were listening to this and I wanted to do it. So maybe we'll just go through kind of the whole process. I mean, the timeline. So I drove here to between Paonia and Hotchkiss on Thursday, left early Thursday morning from my house in Colorado Springs, got here. You and I met up at the sporting goods store where we traded in the voucher and I got my tag. I had to show my hunter safety. Yeah. I'd taken a hunter safety course in North Carolina in like 1999 or 2000 or something. Yep. Showed them that card, got the tag, and then you and I went to the rifle range or the shooting range in Hotchkiss, which is awesome.
Yeah,
by the
it's a
way.
nice facility.
What a great, facility for the community. And we spent a lot of time there shooting the rifle, you teaching me. I mean, I've shot rifles before, but I'm not, I wouldn't even say I'm a beginner. I know what I'm doing. I understand gun safety. I've hunted a lot of birds, but when it comes to rifles, I'm relatively new. And so we spent a lot of time there with you, kind of teaching and helped me get it dialed in. And I was very pleased with how quickly it kind of came back to me. I've sighted people's rifles and stuff like that, but what are you looking for there? Because you've told me you've had people that have never shot a gun before, and you've gotten them dialed in. But talk about that process a little bit for somebody who maybe has very limited experience on a rifle.
Yeah, and I am not a rifle expert. I just know a few basics, kind of. But safety obviously is one of the big ones for me, and being a dad, I think I've gotten a lot more cognizant of safety.
Yeah.
And I've had a few close calls when guiding hunters, like almost being shot by the people I'm guiding. So I've gotten really overly sensitive to being safe with a firearm. So that's a big, when we're there at the range, just talking about that, and which everybody's usually really receptive to. And then just some basic things to help people relax behind their rifle. I mean, they show up for these hunts and they've never, you and I have talked, but that was the first time we've met in person.
Yep.
And so people are meeting a complete stranger and me, and now all of a sudden they're put on the hot seat at a rifle range with some dude standing behind them with a set of binoculars watching what they're doing. It can for sure be a little nerve-wracking. And again, that's where it gets into, it's supposed to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just relax. We're here to have a good time, be safe, and all those good things, but relax and have fun. You know? So as far as the shooting stuff goes, we usually start at about 100 yards. In your situation, you were using a rifle that we had actually from Bussy, but which was kind of cool. And I had that rifle pretty much dialed in. I hadn't shot it in a while, and another hunter had used it in a previous hunt a couple weeks ago, so it was good to shoot it just to make sure. And we did, in fact, have to do a little bit of adjusting, move the scope a little bit left. But as far as accuracy and when people are shooting, if we can hit, a softball size or even smaller with a group of bullets, I feel okay with that. An elk vital area is pretty darn big. If we're all over the place, like shooting left, then shooting right, then shooting high, then we gotta maybe shoot a few more times and address some other shooting technique things. But you were shooting really well right off the bat. I mean, you were putting bullets right next to each other on the paper, so that part made it easy. But the main thing is just making sure, the rifle is accurate, whether it's one that the hunter's borrowing from us or the rifle that they brought, especially if they flew, because TSA is not gentle with that stuff.
Sure.
So making sure it's accurate, and then that the hunter's comfortable. And then if we have the time, we might shoot out to 200 yards. But usually we're shooting 100 yards and seeing how we're doing there, and then I can kind of know what the hunter's going to be capable of. And if they're shooting a little erratic at 100 yards, then we're not going to shoot much further past that. I'm not going to be like, hey, there's a cow at 300 yards.
Yeah.
Go ahead and touch one off and let's see what happens. Where we don't do that. So we work within the hunter's skill set for sure, as far as their comfort level and accuracy with the weapon.
Well, and that's what gave me comfort with it, because my worst fear would be wounding one and having it run off. And
that's a bad deal.
And I don't know anything about like gauging distances, like what's 100 yards, what's 200 yards. I mean, I just think about football fields or soccer fields. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that you had sized up my shooting and you were going to make that decision based on a lot more experience and info than me, it's just another factor that I don't have to worry about. And that makes me more comfortable.
Yeah. Which gives you some confidence too.
Yeah. You're not you've got a million reasons why you'd want me to make a clean shot, and you're not gonna, and so I know that, and so I can just focus on what I need to be, the one thing I need to be focused on in that moment.
Yeah. That's another nice thing about these hunts too, which I think we talked about, where it's like you're not out there with 25 other hunters.
Yeah.
Because on public land stuff, oftentimes it's like if we see the elk, we got to get to them right now and make a move on them.
Because other hunters are
because someone else
around.
might, or that someone else might accidentally bump them, and there you lost your opportunity. That's on a more general, like a over the counter hunt.
Sure.
You know, on these private land hunts, or in a more limited hunt situation on public land, even you can be a little more careful. You can say, you know what, like that morning you killed, they were starting to slip into the cottonwoods there, and it's like, well, if that's what they're doing, we're not gonna push the envelope. We can come back tonight.
Yeah.
And wait for a better setup. That's another nice thing with these hunts is there's not a huge amount of pressure from the standpoint of, hey, we got to go get them right now because this might be our only chance type
Sure.
of thing. It's like if they're settled and they're not acting all spooky or whatever, and they might booger out of there that morning, it's like, let's just let them do their thing. We'll come back and we'll wait and wait till we have a better setup. And anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and that also put me at ease, just knowing, because these hunts are typically, so you get here Thursday, or I got here Thursday, and then we're going to have 3 days potentially devoted to hunting, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then leave Monday morning. And so just knowing like the pressure, we got plenty of time, there are plenty of elk, that morning or that night going to bed, we were watching like 200 to 300 elk off on a different area. And then you could hear them at night around where I'm staying. And so the opportunities are pretty plentiful. So it's not like this, oh, I got to do it right now. I got to do it right now.
The weather helped there too, because we had that snow and some legit cold, and it pushed a lot of the animals down, which was good. It was really helpful from that standpoint.
So the morning of, so Friday morning, we, it's not crazy. We met up at 6:30, drove over there around 6:45, and I think shooting light was at 7 a.m. So we were kind of ready to go at 7. Pull up in your truck, get out, and you know where to go. And so we start looking for them. We saw some off in the distance, so we kind of start making our way to go get close to them or get within a few hundred yards of them. And, I won't go through it all, but we had a few opportunities. I put one or two of them in the crosshairs, but it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And so we, backed off, let them go, and then followed them a little bit further, snuck around this little hillside, came over a hill, and then we got to a point where we could get them in the crosshairs again. And I'd say, how many do you think there were out there? Like 30 or something?
I think maybe 40.
Yeah. And then like you kind of helped me figure out which one to focus in on, got it in the crosshairs. We were maybe, less than 200, but probably more than 150 yards away, would you say?
Yeah, I think I ranged, it was like 180, but then they kind of came a little closer to us. So and
I'm not saying that like like some kind of great shot. It's just that was what you thought was appropriate for me given my shooting. And then we, got this one dialed in. We probably sat there for 5 minutes waiting for the right shot. There was a point where there was some grass in front of them. You couldn't quite see them. And then when it became clear, you were like, all right, if you're ready, go. And then that's when I shot. And it was, I tell you that the whole thing was just, I got so focused in, and I kind of live for these moments where you're not thinking about anything else. And I've only really found it where you can consistently find it and I'm not a big rock climber, but I found it in rock climbing because you're kind of scared and you're not thinking about anything on like a hard rock climbing move. And then on surfing, I found it. And then that was like both of those multiplied by 100. Like there was absolutely nothing on my mind except that. And it was, killing an animal like that is something else. And I had obviously been thinking about it for a damn long time, but we, got it killed, went up to it. And I started hysterically crying and not because I was sad about killing it. I mean, I was sad,
Yeah.
but it was more just this whole powerful thing of like, all right, I just killed this beautiful animal, combined with, I remember the first like rational thought I had was like, I'm going to take this meat home. My daughter's going to eat this meat, which made me, I think that's what kind of set me over the edge, combined with, holy shit, I've always thought I understood what it takes to get meat on the table, but I had no idea. And we had just started, that was the easy part, pulling the trigger. That was that was like 1 second.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole massive, like Niagara Falls of information and thoughts and emotions coming into my head. And then there's just this beautiful animal that, has been out there for, what you guess, but it's probably 15,
it was
18 years.
Yeah, it was an old cow. I mean, I'm not an expert on aging, but she was, her bottom molars were down to the gums.
Yeah.
Especially in the middle there, because they have that circular chewing motion. So their teeth wear in kind of a crescent moon shape. And her bottom molars were down to the gum line. Her top molars were almost completely gone as well. So yeah, I would say she was middle teens if I just had to guess. But
yeah,
a biologist listening to this may be like, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Well, it was old, mature.
She was wide in the hips.
Yeah,
and
big.
She was a dry cow. I don't believe she was carrying a calf or a fetus right now.
Yeah.
I think she wasn't pregnant. So who knows? She may be even past prime. But yeah, she was but she was healthy.
Completely healthy.
She was a big old cow.
But it was just this. It was really. I don't know how to explain it, and it's probably going to take me a while, and it'd probably be better to try to write about it when I'm not just like stuttering and. I don't know what to think about it, but it's
a lot to take.
Very powerful.
Take on. Yeah,
and powerful. Not for like an adventure or like I just had this great accomplishment, but I killed this thing. I accomplished my goal. It was more like what an amazing experience, and what a lesson in how lucky we are to be able to just go to the grocery store and buy meat. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about if we had to do that every time we wanted meat. And so anyway, I'm still trying to figure it out, but it was overwhelming emotionally. And in the photos of me with the elk, a few minutes after that, like I'm not smiling, but I'm not scowling. And I thought, as you were taking the pictures, I was like, I'm not going to smile. I'm not going to be like yucking it up. Not that anything's wrong with that, but it was almost like I wanted to be respectful of this thing.
Yeah. And that's a really personal thing. Whether it's when you're taking photos or just at that time in general, everybody responds to it differently. From the experiences that I've had, some people are really reverent about it, which I probably appreciate that the most.
Yeah. For
the reasons you just stated really well. Killing's serious business.
It's no joke.
It's no joke, and it doesn't. And when it's a big animal, not to downplay shooting a squirrel or a rabbit or a pheasant, because their life means just as much. But watching a big animal die it's a powerful thing. They don't want to die. They don't die. Elk are renowned for their will to live, and watching them struggle, and they're trying to get back with their herd who's walking away from them, and they can't. It's a hard thing to watch sometimes, and that underscores the importance of doing it right. Making sure that your first shot that you take is a good one. Yes, mistakes can happen. You might not make the picture perfect shot you meant to, but then you stick with it and you finish that animal or do whatever you can within your physical and mental capabilities to get it done out of respect for the animal. So yeah, it's a serious thing. And I try to let people have some time to themselves, like, hey, I'm going to go get the game bags and my knife and da-da-da. But I always say, please take a minute and give your thanks. This animal just gave its life. I don't care how you do it.
Sure.
If you want to put grass in its mouth or spin it so its head is facing to the east, or however you want to do it, or just pet its neck and say thanks. I don't care, but just do something, to acknowledge what just happened. I think that's a really important part of that. And as far as the photo stuff, I smile in my pictures because I'm shocked that I had the skill set to kill something 9 times out of 10. Yeah. It's like, holy cow, it worked. But no, if people want to be straight-faced, I totally respect that. The one thing I don't like is if people are just sour pusses.
Like tough guy.
Kinda.
Yeah.
I'm not really into that. It's like, come on, man. This animal is 20 times tougher than you.
Kick the shit out of you if you have that gun. Yeah.
Right. So yes, it takes skill as a hunter to kill an animal, and I respect that. But just again, it's all personal. And if those people want to have a tough guy face or whatever, cool, good for them. But just from me personally, it's like, come on, man. This is, again, it's supposed to be fun. Yes, this is a serious thing. You just killed an animal. You took its life. But there's also a reason to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And be rejoicing in the fact that you just got this bounty of meat, some of the best meat on planet Earth, that you can feed your daughters with. You can feed friends and family for the next year. So there is reason to be celebratory in a sense, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but in a respectful manner.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, I think it just comes down to that, probably in this and probably in life in general. It's just being respectful of the process and of what's happening. And because again, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and I used to have to, BS my way through selling ranches that had elk hunting on it and act like I knew what I was talking about. But I mean, you don't know until you're in the middle of it. And I would imagine I want to continue doing it, and I got a long way to go, but I would imagine that at some point I will be smiling because it won't be as new, but it was really just it was like a Niagara Falls of emotion combined with, I mean, I was even thinking about how in the hell did Native Americans do this? Like, these animals are monsters. They are big. They could just beat the shit out of me. And the fact that they did it without guns for so long, I mean, thousands and thousands of years. I don't know. I'm still trying to, it just gave me a completely new perspective on stuff that I thought I halfway understood.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't think you can ask for much more than out of an experience than that. It's humbling.
It is.
I feel like every time I learn something, whether it's in work, like with water rights or with this, like every time I learn something worth learning, the big lesson is how much more I have to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
which is a good way. Yeah. So I get myself together and then we start.
Which that wasn't, you're not the first one. I mean, I cry in certain situations, when I kill an animal, if for whatever reason something happened or it triggers something, and I would much rather see that than, well, that's the wrong way to phrase it. I appreciate hunters being able to show that kind of.
Well, it's authentic.
It is.
It's genuine. You're not, the tough guy routine. That's most of the time, unless you're just a truly like a warrior, like the tough guy routine is a show where, that's my opinion. That's not your opinion. Whereas I think, it's hard to come across authentic emotions these days. I think.
Well, I think I appreciate it because it lets me know that the experience is hitting them in the right way.
Yeah.
I guess is maybe how I would phrase it. And if people don't cry and they're smiling and super happy, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If they cry and they're a little bit somber, I've had hunters tell me, I don't know if I'll do this again. And that's like a new hunter.
Sure.
The guy I was telling you about last year. He was super blunt with it, He was so excited to have killed one and have the food, but he told me at the end of the hunt, I don't know if I'll ever do this again. Mm-hmm. Cool. It's authentic. Like, you've thought about it, processed it, and if that's where you're at with your feelings and mentality, that's great. So,
well, you're in a position to make an informed decision. It's one thing if you say, it's fine if somebody says, I never want to hunt ever in my life. That's fine. But I think a guy like that who goes out, does it, processes all the meat, and then just says, that was really awesome, and I've had my fill.
Yep.
So we get to work, and you go through this great teaching process of how to quarter it, how to get the meat ready so that we can take it back to hang it up and then begin the processing later, which I thought was, again, as I was watching you do it, as I was trying to help you were very patient with my quote help. You talk about how you need to leave in our case, the mammary glands on, so
evidence of sex,
yep. and just all you're teaching the entire time, which I really, really appreciate. I wish I could have been more like legit help, but that was a fun process. And then we could talk about that forever, but come back, hang the meat up. So luckily I got one the first morning. So we hung it up all day Friday, all day Saturday, and then Sunday, your awesome wife, Anna, leads the processing portion of it. And so you guys have basically like a butcher shop in your barn. Mm-hmm. And so we spent between 5 and 6 hours processing this animal.
Yeah.
Everything from making hamburger meat to steaks. And can you just talk about that process and what you guys are trying to accomplish by doing that? Because that was equally, if not more, educational. Learning about all the different cuts, and it was really it's almost overwhelming how much info was there.
Yeah. I wish Anna would be way better at articulating this than her bumbling husband. The big thing there, again, and that's, as you saw, when it comes time for that, I just work here.
Yeah.
Anna
she's unbelievable, man.
She knows a lot.
It's crazy.
And she's good at it. And she's
also, like, she's got a teacher's mentality.
I was going to say, her demeanor, she is able to, it's difficult not to like Anna. Mm-hmm. She's so damn nice and patient. Yeah. So she's able to do that and get the information across really well. And again, her thing is she loves food. Mm-hmm. She talked about, like, she spends a lot of time thinking about food and preparing food, and she's kind of taken an interesting path herself. She had a little bit of time where she was a vegetarian, and then she was like, no, this is not for me. And then once she started getting into meat again, she just wanted to know more about it, as far as, like, okay, where is it coming from, and and how does this all come together, and did a lot of research on the industrialized food system that most of our country relies on, for better or worse. And when we started this, the concept of hunting, and you're procuring your own source of food through hunting, and being able to deliver that message to a broader range of people. Not so much to be like, well, everyone should hunt and everyone should get their own food themselves. That's not really it. It's more, you have the choice, And I remember thinking that right after we shot that elk, and one of the first things you said was, this is something that, and I can't remember the exact quote, but you said something like, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. As humans.
Yeah, as humans, we're predators. And I think there's truth in that, for sure. And that's kind of, that same mentality spills over into the processing and the teaching component of breaking those animals down. Is we're lucky enough to have the choice. Mm-hmm. We live in a country where our wildlife resources are managed in a really, by and large, a really good way that gives us these. There's no place else you can do what we're doing in the rest of the world, really, where anyone can. And so, anyways, I'm getting off track.
No, I love it.
But the food thing for her is the big one. Anna's not a huge hunter. She would if she had to, I think. But her thing is the food. That's her motivation, and that's the message she wants to get across to people: is you have this opportunity, you have this choice, and let me teach you about it. And here's how you can make the most of understanding this animal that you killed and the different cuts of meat, and and how to bring about a lot of goodness for the next year when you're pulling stuff out of the freezer. So
the thing that struck me about the whole process is just me, personally, I'm 44 years old, and ever since I've been alive, either the people, the people who are taking care of me, my parents or me, we have outsourced every single part of the meat procuring process. And a lot of it's kind of unpleasant parts, the killing, and the kind of gutting, for lack of a better word, breaking it down, and then the processing. And none of it,
we're not responsible for a lot of it.
Yeah, we let that be done somewhere else, and that's fine. I mean, as the number of humans we have on Earth, and I mean, the reality is, like, I can't be spending my days. I can't be spending, multiple hours a week processing meat, just given the way that my life is.
Yep.
And so it's really a privilege that we're able to outsource that.
Yes.
But I do think it's important to understand that, to understand how much goes into getting an animal from, outside onto your plate.
Yeah.
And I thought I understood it. I've read a million books about it. I've talked to a million people. I mean, one of my favorite podcast episodes was with a woman named Kate Kavanaugh, who's a butcher. And so and she's become a good friend, but you can't understand it too. And I still don't understand it. I mean, if anything, I understand how little I actually know.
Well, you're connecting the dots though. And that's one of the things that I think these hunts that we do really articulates is you're watching that animal on the hoof. And then a few days later, you're trimming out the skirt steak, and because you were standing there in the field, where that skirt steak came from exactly, and you saw the hind quarter, and now you're cutting the round off, and you help put it in the game bag, just really seeing, not to sound cheesy, but literally the timber to table thing. You saw it from when it was alive and walking through your scope, and now you're putting it in the package.
Well, another interesting thing is just kind of the for lack of a better word, the recycling involved. So, there's this beautiful animal that's walking through the field. Next thing you know, it's dead. 3 days later, I've got 2 ridiculous coolers full of meat, 150 pounds of meat I'm taking back to my family that we will eat. My daughters will grow because of that meat. And then, like, when we were quartering the animal, obviously get all the guts out, throw those in the field, and we put them out. It was probably, when we left there, it was maybe like 11 a.m. or something like that. Was that right?
Yeah, I think it was 10:30.
10:30.
Yeah,
and then
11.
And then you went back that afternoon for some reason, and pretty much all those guts were gone, and all was left was a big pile of grass that had been in the thing's stomach because the birds had eaten them.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
Coyotes will eat whatever's left.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, this, I don't know, it's almost like, I just go back to the Native American days and think about how they would have thought about that. And it is like, it all kind of disappears and turns into other types of energy. Mm-hmm. It's really...
it does get recycled pretty quickly. And we try to take as much as we can. I always try to have the mentality of, you want to piss off the coyotes because you don't leave them much. But there's going to be stuff that gets left. And it is crazy, especially I'm always impressed with the birds. It's like their stomachs are so small, but they can put away an elk carcass in a matter of hours sometimes, or a day or two. It's crazy how much, how quickly it gets consumed, when it's out there. So, which is cool to see for sure. When you get a pile of eagles and ravens and magpies all working a carcass over, it's pretty neat to watch.
And even the scraps that we trimmed off of the meat yesterday when we were processing it, that'll be
gone in hours.
Bird feed.
Yep, that'll be gone super fast.
So it really is. I mean, I'm not aware of what happens with all the scraps and everything in an industrial type food processing plant. I mean, I'm sure they use it because they can make money on it. But even though we're using trucks and we got sharp knives and we used a gun, like there is a it seems pretty natural, the whole process.
Yeah.
Especially seeing that gut pile and how it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, just a unbelievably powerful is the only word I can think of, a powerful experience. And I'm sure if somebody's listening to this and they're an experienced hunter, they've been doing this their whole life, that guy's making too big of a deal out of it. Well, maybe so. But for me, it was extremely like a foundational shift in thinking about things, which doesn't happen much. And I think people who listen to this podcast think I'm like a happy-go-lucky, like in a good mood all the time kind of guy, and I'm not. Like, I'm generally pessimistic and jaded on stuff. And an experience like this, it's rare that I have an experience where it's like it shifts everything in my thinking in a good way. Yeah, usually in a bad way.
Oh, it's good to hear.
So, I mean, I just can't thank you enough, man. I mean, really, I mean, this is going to change. It's going to change everything, the way I think about things. So I just really appreciate it.
That's cool. No, it's good to hear. And that's one of the intents, is for people to come away from this experience wanting to hunt more, whether they go back to Michigan or Florida and pick up hunting there, or wherever they're going back to. But they hopefully take, I think I mentioned this in the first podcast where you and I talked about it, but hopefully take that message and intent and respect for the resource. They take that with them back home and share it with their kids and friends or coworkers or whoever, and kind of have that ripple effect, which hopefully that happens. But yeah, it's cool that you weren't turned off by the hunt itself. You know, it's like hearing you say, yeah, I want to keep doing this. And yeah, hopefully when your girls get older, they're going to go with you. And whether they become hunters or not, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But again, hopefully they have an understanding of, hey, Dad kills this animal because it's feeding us. This is where our food comes from. We have that choice where we live. With that choice, obviously, comes responsibility. And, that gets into a little bit of the management and politics and all that stuff that can rear its head up pretty quick when it comes to wildlife management. But for now, we're blessed that we have that opportunity in our country, but it's something we got to fight for and take care of and be engaged in, stay involved. And that's something I think you do a good job of, obviously, especially with this podcast now, is you have the ability to connect with people and talk to people and spread a good message, which I think is really powerful. That's increasingly important by the day, it seems like. So, and you mentioned, if somebody who's a longtime hunter listening to this, they might be like, well, Ed's making too big a deal out of it. It goes back to what I said. Everybody handles it differently.
Yeah.
You don't think you're making a big deal out of it. It is a powerful thing, and you had never experienced it before. You got to process it in your own way. And the guy who's hunted for 40 years and killed a lot of animals, he's going to process it his way. He or she has a lot more under their belt, from a hunting standpoint. So to each their own. End of the day, it's up to the individual, and you got to respect that. And so, yeah.
Now I got to learn how to cook, which is going to be, I'm super excited about. Can you say the name of the cookbook that you recommended?
Oh, yeah. It's there's a lot of good ones out there, but the one we almost always go to is Hank Shaw's Buck Moose.
Okay.
So it's a outstanding cookbook, in my opinion. A really wide variety of recipes that aren't overly difficult. I mean, if I can do some of them, anybody can. I'm not a good
elk shank we had last night was one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So good.
Yeah, you don't need to throw shanks in the grinder.
And now, and then probably tonight, I'm gonna go hardcore and just go. I'm eating the heart tonight, which is great.
Maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
let it marinate in that.
Oh yeah. I'll marinate tonight.
So and Peruvian then heart recipe.
I've got, what was it, like 45 pounds of burger, and then all these steaks. I hope my freezer's big enough.
That's a bounty, man. That's a beautiful gift for sure.
Well, thank you, man. What an unbelievable. I knew it was going to be awesome, but I didn't know it was going to be as impactful. I've done some crazy shit, but it's like stuff that required a lot of training and stuff that put me through the ringer mentally and physically. And I would say that this was more like the impactfulness was, I don't know if it was more, but it's different than anything I've ever experienced. So,
yeah, well, it's, again, you're killing is serious. I think it's serious business.
Yeah.
It's, and yeah, not to sound like a psycho, but it's like, death is a part of life. Killing.
Well, I've been paying people to kill for me.
Yeah.
I've been paying people to kill cows and whatever else I've been eating. And so now I did it.
Yeah. And I enjoy that more than the opposite, more than like what you're saying. Like, I'll just go and buy it, or whatever. I would rather be taking responsibility for it. And you get to have an incredible experience that I think taps into, as you mentioned, it taps into who we are, as
we're built for it
as humans. And I hope we don't ever disconnect from that. I think there is a lot of disconnect at this particular point in our society as a whole. But man, if I can, I don't want to go that route. I want to make sure that I'm able to stay at ground level with those animals, and spend time watching them and chasing them, and when the opportunity allows, killing one for my family to eat. Knowing that elk or deer that I killed, that's not the last one in the United States of America.
Yeah.
It's a managed resource that we're kind of stewards of, and it's a controlled system, sort of, I guess, for a lack of a better way to put it. It's not just out there whacking and stacking at will.
Sure.
It's it's an important thing that we have. It's an awesome thing that we have.
All right, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it worked out where you were able to.
Well, there's all you.
It was,
you set me up. It was a great experience. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number one, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word of mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number two, you can go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number 3, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon, and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number 4, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. One email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way. So head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.